Let's take a look at the QRadar Vulnerability Manager by clicking on the Vulnerabilities tab in here. So what I have here is manage vulnerabilities by instances, and I can pivot on actual vulnerabilities themselves. Instance, for example, the vulnerability are 517, as we see here. But if we actually pivot on the actual instances, the number is slightly bigger because many of them, or some of them, are in more than one host. And all these vulnerabilities contain a good deal of metadata that we don't always have the time to look at it. So for example, let me click on this one, and this is how it comes from the National Vulnerability Database. So it has things like exploitability high, remediation, official fix, confidence confirmed. So this, for example, this one doesn't have any patch from any IPS. So if we look at this other vulnerability, this one, trace route information, we see that there is also, those parameters, all that data that we don't have the time to look, and this one has actually specified virtual patching. So it says, well, the IBM, the McAfee, and the Fortinet IPSs can stop those, and here are the name of the actual signature that you need to deploy to actually stop that vulnerability at the IPS level. So we can perform multiple searches in here to sort those vulnerabilities. And we have all these parameters, like access complexity vector. Again, many of these come from the actual metadata, if not all of them. Some of them come from what QRadar has actually found about them. You can search by host name. You can find by, let's actually scroll all the way to the bottom and sort vulnerabilities by IPSs, for example. Vulnerability has a virtual path from vendor. And let's take McAfee, for example, which is the first one that comes up. Perform a search, and out of those 500 and something vulnerabilities, more than half are actually can be stopped by McAfee. It's pretty good by deploying the actual signature. Let's perform another search. Let's say that I'm comparing here how effective are the virtual patches of all multiple vendors. I haven't manipulated this data. This data came from different scanners that we inputted into the demo. So let's again scroll all the way down to vulnerability has a virtual path from vendor and look at Cisco, Snort, Cisco. At filter, perform a search. No, actually it doesn't have any. Let me actually look under Snort. They acquire the Snort IPS. So again, scroll all the way down. Vulnerability has a virtual patch from vendor, and I should have Snort here. No, here it is, Snort. Add the filter, and actually slightly below 263, 243, 20 less than McAfee can do. It's actually see on virtual patches how IBM is doing. Normally we have far many more virtual patches than other vendors. So again, scroll down to the bottom and look for vulnerability has a virtual patch from vendor, IBM prevention, and perform a search. Well, actually it's much better than what I was expecting. 491, so the vast majority of them can be stopped by deploying the actual virtual patch from vendor. Now we can also do other searches, like for example, which of them can be fixed or has a fix, and we have different components in here, different providers. Apps can ask. Let's take a look at Endpoint Manager, which is the old name for BigFix. And well, not really the old name, but we rename BigFix and to Endpoint Manager, and now we rename it back to BigFix. And if we click on it, we see that actually pretty good. 311 of those I can actually tell BigFix, go ahead and patch those. And actually there's now an integration between BigFix and Curator, that we can actually send that data straight into the BigFix console. More of that on a video later. And I can actually combine the searches. I can actually edit this search and say, well, out of these vulnerabilities that BigFix can fix, which of them does not have a virtual patch from vendor, from Proventia, for example. And notice that I can select as before here Proventia, but we have in the conditions, we have also the negative conditions as well. So does not equal to Proventia. So add that filter. So show me the ones that BigFix can fix and Proventia can't, because I actually want to tell BigFix, hey, you know, take care of this one, because I cannot stop it with my IPS. And we see that 19 of those cannot be stopped by our IPS, but they can be stopped and can be patched by BigFix. We can do other search criteria, like, for example, early warnings. Let me actually look at that one. Include early warnings. What this is since last time we patch, or either with Curator itself or when last time we imported the patching data, because Curator gets a feed, a direct feed from the National Vulnerability Database. So as soon as a new vulnerability gets published, we get the information and the metadata about it. The early warnings is, well, show me those that I have found after I patch, and these are, you know, quite a few of them, which allows me to be quite active. I don't have to wait until I do my next scan to find the vulnerabilities. As soon as I get the data from the National Vulnerability Database, Curator can look at the metadata, figure out what is in the asset database, and determine, well, these are the systems that are vulnerable to it.